Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Chris Glennie. I'm the Chief Executive at Moresby, which is a careers guidance business supplying careers guidance platform to secondary schools in the UK and around the world. And welcome to this Becoming Professional webinar, which is a series of webinars that we've been running, which introduce young people and careers leaders to opportunities that might be available to them after they leave school or college or higher education. And this one, we're going to be focusing on CILEX, chartered legal executives, CILEX lawyers and paralegals, which is an area of the legal profession which people may be less familiar with. And so it's an opportunity to find out about something which is not necessarily that well known. And I'm joined by my esteemed guests who will talk in turn about their engagement with CILEX and their career journeys and how they're involved, and they will I'll allow them to introduce themselves in a few moments. But just a little bit of housekeeping. We won't actually be able to have a live Q&A session, but there is a Q&A section at the bottom of your screens. If you want to leave questions, if we have time at the end, we will try and address some of those questions. Otherwise, we may answer them in wrap-up communications. The other thing is to say that we aim to speak for about half an hour, 40 minutes. We don't want to detain you for too long, but there's obviously a lot of ground to cover, and the recording of the webinar will be available later if you want to revisit any section that perhaps left you confused or you want to investigate a little bit more. So without any further ado, I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves. So Stephanie, perhaps you'd like to go first.
Thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stephanie Smith and I am a Chartered Legal Executive. I actually only became a Chartered Legal Executive on the 30th of August this year, although I have been working in law for many years and I practice in family law.
Thank you, Stephanie. And obviously we'll come back to Stephanie's experience and how she qualified, where she came from, what her ambitions are, what being a Chartered Legal Executive really means in due course. But Justine, if you'd like to go next.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So I'm Justine Woodcock and I'm one of the pathway specialists at CILEX Law School. So I'm actually focused mainly on family law, so that's interesting to hear from Stephanie. And my background before I joined the law school was that I qualified as a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Legal Executives, as it was back then, and practiced in law for 20 years or so before converting over to teach. Excellent.
Thank you, Justine. And Vicky, perhaps you'd like to tell people a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. I'm Vicky Strutman. I'm an apprentice paralegal at KHF Solicitors, which is a family law firm based in Greater Manchester.
Excellent. So we've got a lot of family law represented here. So other areas of law are available. So let me turn to you first, Stephanie. Tell us first of all what CILEX is, and then therefore what following from that, what a CILEX lawyer or chartered legal executive is.
Yes, certainly. So CILEX, as was mentioned earlier, is the Chartered Institute of Legal Executives. It is a professional association and the governing body for over 21,000 chartered legal executives, other legal practitioners and paralegals. CILEX recently acquired the Institute of Paralegals, which is the UK's largest professional body for paralegals and the only membership body that independently regulates these legal practitioners. The CILEX route to qualifying offers quite a unique route to a legal career and becoming a qualified lawyer. And one of those unique points, I would say, is that you tend to specialise pretty much from when you start your training. The other major unique point is that there's no requirement for a law degree. Obviously, law graduates and those with non-law degrees can also qualify as lawyers through CILEX, but it's not a necessity to have a law degree and or to have gone to university. So I'll just explain what a chartered legal executive is. So CLE, that's the acronym that we use. They are also known as CILEX fellows. Now, a fellow is also known as an authorised person. Now, the description of an authorised person is someone who has been given permission by a legal regulator to carry out particular types of legal work. And that legal work is known as reserved legal work. And that becomes important later down the line as to whether you are happy to stay as a chartered legal executive or whether you would like to become a CILEX lawyer, because they are quite distinct roles depending on which area of law you practice in. So I'll just explain, if you'd like me to, Chris, the route to qualifying to become a chartered legal executive.
So I think we'll pick that up. We'll pick that up slightly later with.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine.
That's okay. So just while you're talking about authorised person, can you just clarify exactly for people what can you do then as an authorised person?
Okay, so I am, when I recently became a fellow, I then became an authorised person. So what that means is the day-to-day work that we carry out is very much the same as the type of work that solicitors would do. So a solicitor is the most common term that people know for a lawyer, and a lawyer is an umbrella term for a solicitor, a barrister, a chartered legal executive, or CILEX lawyer. So some chartered legal executives run their own law firm doing legal work, but that legal work is not reserved legal work. So, for example, things like writing wills and some employment law matters and giving legal advice on, general legal advice. An authorised person is also able to administer oaths. So there are some documentation, for example, that needs to be signed as true before, in the presence of a lawyer. And chartered legal executives can do that work much like a solicitor can.
So broadly speaking, how would you compare and contrast a chartered legal executive or CILEX lawyer with, a solicitor or a barrister or which are generally more well known, or at least the terms are familiar?
Yeah, so I mean, as I was saying, lawyers, including solicitors, and barristers and CILEX lawyers, they're all the same. But in terms of what they can offer, and so if I try and differentiate between solicitors and chartered legal executives and then barristers, for example, lawyers work in private practice in the main, and they're generally the first port of call for people seeking legal advice. Whereas barristers, up until 2004, actually, they'd never had any direct access with the public. And then after 2004, saw the introduction of the public access scheme, and barristers can now take their instructions directly from clients. But prior to that, only lawyers could pass instructions over to barristers, and then barristers will represent the clients in court. But as I said, that has changed slightly now. So
can you talk then a little bit about your motivation? What was the initial, kind of spur to you wanting to qualify as a CILEX lawyer, and potentially as a CILEX lawyer as opposed to a solicitor, for example?
Yeah, certainly. So I never went to university. In fact, I never did any A-levels, and I only recently became a CILEX fellow. So for me, kind of, I'm way down into my life, and my children are grown up, and I wasn't really. I never intended to become a lawyer. I did start working in a law firm many years ago as an office junior. And it was a career that I gave up after a couple of years because I moved to a new town. And then when my daughter went back to school, I started working in a law firm again as a receptionist. And one of the partners in that law firm asked me if I had ever thought about becoming a legal executive. Now, I was living in New Zealand at that time, and I didn't know what a legal executive was. It's basically the same there, and they have a route to qualifying which is very similar to the CILEX route via what we would know as Open University, so distance learning. And so I started the course, and I just thought, yeah, you know, I'll do it. And so I started it, and then I spent a couple of years training in New Zealand. And then when I came back to England, I kind of got the family settled and things again. And then I picked it up again. And I spent 4.5 years studying. And then, as I said, I graduated last year as an advanced paralegal. And then I've spent the last year practicing, and I did my portfolio. And then on Saturday, so in 2 days' time, I will graduate as a fellow. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, that is very exciting. I'm sure you'll be posting pictures on LinkedIn and
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. You've gone through that whole journey, and you've now on Saturday will be fully graduating as a chartered legal executive. So Vicky, if I can turn to you at this point, you're obviously at the sort of, you know, I hesitate to say the opposite end of that journey, but you know, very much at the sort of beginning of your professional legal career. So what kind of got you going, if you like? Where are you at in that journey at the moment?
I had quite an unconventional start to my career. So I actually left school when I was aged 15. It just wasn't the right environment for me. I ended up going to an apprenticeship training centre where I got my functional skills in maths and English, and there was a job opportunity for an apprenticeship as an apprentice secretary at this firm. So I did that. I ended up getting a level 2 in business admin. And then it was my employer who approached me. They just interviewed somebody who said they were doing a CILEX apprenticeship for a paralegal, and they'd never heard of it either, and said, is this something that you're interested in doing? And I thought, I can't pass this opportunity up. So I took it. We also have a chartered legal executive who works at the firm, and she's absolutely incredible. So that was another motivator for me wanting to do this course and progressing.
And so how long have you been studying for now?
2 years. So the apprenticeship is 2 years, and I took my exams yesterday.
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you for pitching up today for us. So you want to be engaging in some light relief, I would have thought. This hardly qualifies. So again, for the audience's information, what is a paralegal?
So everything that I do is closely monitored by a supervisor, but I'm able to provide advice to clients. I've slowly and steadily built up a caseload of around 20 clients of my own. So we can basically do everything apart from representing the client at court, obviously with the help of our colleagues and supervisors. So completing court documentation, having appointments with clients, attending meetings with them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you sort of anticipated my next question, but again, and I know there's no proper answer to this question, but what does a typical day look like in your world?
So in the morning, it could be attending it's called a PLO meeting. It's part of family law. And in the afternoon, it could then be taking instructions for a statement and drafting that statement. There's also a lot of times where I'll attend court when we've got barristers on cases, and I'll clerk them. So I'll take notes and then prepare the letters for the clients after, explaining what happened. A lot of filing forms at court.
And when you started, you said, you know, you had this unconventional start. I think Stephanie had an unconventional start as well. So I think that's sort of a you know, there's sort of a theme here. But when you started in a law firm and you started the apprenticeship, were you quite quickly doing, you know, what you might consider to be proper legal work, as it were?
Yes, very quickly. My employers are great, and they always want you to progress and be as independent as possible. So they kind of push you to start just getting into it and applying what you're learning on the course to your role. And it's really interesting, I think, to be able to learn about something and then it crop up in real life, and you're able to apply it to a situation.
And we'll in a while we'll have Justine talk a little bit more about the different qualification routes. But you mentioned that you're on an apprenticeship. So what does that look and, well, hopefully completed your apprenticeship, but what does that look and feel like as somebody who's working and completing an apprenticeship?
So we take 1 day a week, or it's 7 hours. It can be split in the week as study time. And then we'd also have regular webinars. We'd normally get a case study or a worksheet to complete before the webinar and reading to do. And then we go to the webinar and everything's discussed about what we've been learning before. I think it works greatly for me because I learn by doing. So to be able to be given what I need, like go away and do it and then come back and discuss it is the best way that I learn. And
so having got to where you've got to now, are you what's your plan now? Are you going to take a pause, or you imagine yourself continuing studying, or what's your thinking there?
I think my plan is to maybe have a year just to settle into my role properly. And then I'm looking at progressing to do the chartered legal executive.
And do you imagine you try and do that through the apprenticeship route as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So we've talked about the different ways that people have come in to this profession, and it very much is a route to a full-blown legal profession without necessarily the traditional educational backgrounds that you might expect lawyers to have. Justine, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role and CILEX Law School.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Chris. So my role, as I sort of touched on at the outset, I'm a what they call a pathway specialist. So my job is essentially to sort of tutor students. So I've worked closely with Vicky this unit, and it's actually a very, very rewarding thing to do. So I work not only with apprentices at the law school, we've got basically 2 routes that we deliver at the law school. We've got our apprentices, such as Vicky, where they are sponsored by their employers and they're given that day's study day, as Vicky sort of mentioned there. And they are very much sort of embodied within the law school and have a full program of learning with us. We have webinars sort of every week or so with our apprentices, and as Vicky sort of said as well, worksheets and activities to help embed the learning. So that's the apprenticeships that we do. I don't just do family law, so we also do a bit of litigation and contract law as well, because that's where I first started before I converted across to family specialism. But aside from the apprenticeships, we've also got a lot of distance learners that we support at the law school as well. They are on what we call a CPQ program, which is the professional qualification certificate. And that is very much for people who aren't on the apprenticeship and who want purely to deal with it in their own timeline. And don't want that full package of teaching and study to accompany what they're doing. So the CPQ program, again, similar to the apprenticeship, it's got 2 levels of qualification. So you have CPQ Foundation program, which once that is passed, and that's about an 18-month program or 2 years. Once that is passed, then our learners can call themselves a CILEX paralegal. If they want to go beyond that qualification, they can go then into the advanced CPQ program, where they will qualify then as an advanced CILEX paralegal. And then beyond that, it's kind of what Stephanie's done, that it's sort of going through then to sort of the professional stage to become then the CILEX lawyer. Now, aside from that, on the apprenticeship scheme, so if we're looking at them, they're 2 very separate pathways. So you've got your CPQ, which is your distance learning, your apprenticeships. Vicky is on the, forgive me, so there's a paralegal apprenticeship, and there is also a chartered lawyer apprenticeship as well. So as Vicky's mentioned there, that may be something she goes on to do, because by passing the paralegal apprenticeship, that then entitles you to go into the apprenticeship to become the chartered lawyer. So the difference between the distance learning and the apprenticeship is basically the apprenticeship is funded by your employer and is supported by your employer, and you get a full package of support from the law school as well. Now, there are apprenticeships other than through CILEX Law School, but obviously I work at the law school, so this is what we do. The apprenticeship is fully supported by your employer. You have time to study and you're fully supported by the law school. The CPQ programme, it's horses for courses, really. Some people can't have that employer support, or can't allow that day's release for study time, and they have to do it in their own time. So the CPQ distance learning programme is very flexible and allows for learners to have their own bespoke journey, and they can pick it up and put it down as they wish in terms of the timeline, whereas the apprenticeship is a bit more structured.
Thank you, Justine. That was very thorough. And as we were talking about earlier, in the interest of complete information to listeners, CILEX Law School is, if you're on the CPQ programme or on the apprenticeship programme, the CILEX Law School is one provider, but there are other providers as well who may deliver things in slightly different ways. Is that fair?
Yes. I mean, I can only account for how we deliver our programme. Absolutely.
And just to reiterate for people, though I think this has been stressed quite well by both Stephanie and Vicky, that prior qualifications to come in at the paralegal apprenticeship or CPQ foundation stage, there are no prior educational requirements. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So yes, very much for the paralegal programme and the foundation stage, no prior qualifications are needed. So it really does open up the arena to people who have had not got their school qualifications or decide to get into law for different reasons. So it's very good in that regard. Equally, if you have got a law degree or you have got prior qualification, then you can come in at the higher level, because we do take into account exemptions. So it's a case of having a chat, really, and working out what's right for you and what entry point you come in at, and that will depend upon really the prior learning and prior qualification. Excellent.
Now, we were going to have another colleague join to talk about the kind of employment prospects of chartered legal executives and CILEX paralegals, but unfortunately, he has not been able to attend. But in correspondence with him beforehand, it is very clear that a number of firms, and Stephanie, probably Vicky, and in fact, all of you may be able to attest that the legal profession is keen to attract a wider range of entrants to the profession, and in fact chartered legal executives are now seen, and CILEX paralegals seen as very much welcome within firms, and the opportunities to progress are certainly there, and possibly as good now as ever. Stephanie, would that be fair, do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I've been working in law firms back in the UK after coming back from New Zealand for, a decade now. And, when the views have changed very much so in that time. And I've worked in firms where there are directors who are chartered legal executives. There should be no barrier to anybody progressing based on their route to qualifying, and this is something that I feel very passionate about. And for anybody that connects with me on LinkedIn or Instagram, they know that I will, we need to change the narrative, and the narrative is changing, but it is something that I am very passionate about. For me personally, I don't feel any different. I don't feel viewed any different. But unfortunately, there are a few firms that are still kind of coming up, into the modern day. But there are lots and lots and lots of firms where there is no difference between solicitors and chartered legal executives or CILEX lawyers. So,
Excellent. And Vicky, in your experience and seeing in the world that you've inhabited, would you feel the same?
Definitely. I know my employer knows how hard it is to get your foot in the door in these kind of jobs, and she definitely opens it up to a lot of people to be able to make this progression from her own experience, which I think is amazing.
Yeah. Excellent. I just want to touch on, so we call these webinars Becoming Professional because we're talking about professions, and professions tend to have professional bodies, professional organizations who are kind of responsible for the training and the ongoing professional development and frankly ethical behavior of their members. And Stephanie, I know you have a role within CILEX on something called the Professional Board. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that means to be part of a profession and what the expectations are as part of a profession?
Yeah, certainly. So overall, CILEX members are regulated by CILEX Regulation Limited. When you work in a law firm, the majority of law firms are regulated by the SRA, which is the Solicitors Regulation Authority. So if you are CILEX qualified and you work in a SRA regulated law firm, then you are technically regulated by both. Now, so CILEX regulation is the independent regulatory body for CILEX members, and they authorise and regulate the legal professionals and also some law firms as well. Now, they are designed, their role is to protect consumers' interests, promote high professional standards, and encourage a diverse and effective legal profession. And their role is much like the SRA's role. So they will set the standards for qualifying as a solicitor. They will monitor the performance of organisations that provide legal training. They draft rules of conduct, amongst other things. That, you know, there is lots of bits and pieces, and you can look online at the code of conducts that we have to adhere to. So when you are a qualified and regulated lawyer, you are required to carry out something called CPD, which is continuing professional development, and your requirements are determined by your legal regulator. So you must comply with your CPD requirements in order to remain qualified. So once you become a CILEX lawyer or chartered legal executive, and even at the advanced paralegal stage, you do have a requirement to continue on with your professional development. I mean, one good thing about that is that your organisation where you're working, they will make it a condition of your employment as well, and they will also provide a budget for your training. But just that element goes to show that, much like with a profession like being a doctor, you know, they have to prove every year that they're fit to work, if you like. And we as professionals, we have to show what we've done in the last year, how we've done it, and sometimes you have to evidence, you know, you have to refer to the types of points of the code of conduct that you've met in order to meet that requirement. So and that is ongoing throughout your time in the profession. So it is, and as I said, it is a regulated environment as well. So
and Justine, I think you can say that as part of your initial training, then it's very much you know, teaching people that they're part of a profession and that these things are going to be ongoing is part of your initial formation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the first sort of lessons that we impart on our learners, really, is those CILEX codes of conduct. I'm sure our learners will attest to that, you know, we do some activities and some sessions as to linking sort of behaviours with the standards, and that is one of the great things about CILEX, is that we teach law very much from a user's perspective. I think I know I'm playing favourites here, but I think people with a law degree sort of come out with that background qualification and understand obviously what the law is. But at CILEX, we actually teach our learners how to apply that law, how it works in practice, and very much with a sharp eye on the CILEX codes of conduct, which is all about, you know, maintaining honesty and integrity and meeting the client's best interests and things like that, which you have to do on a daily basis as a practitioner.
Great. Great. Look, we're drawing to an end. I see there's only one. There's a comment really on the Q&A, which is really referencing Vicky and saying it's great to see a young person, and it would be great to see more of that, you know, kind of in colleges. And that's the sort of thing that we're, you know, trying to facilitate through this kind of session. It will be recorded and obviously can be watched or played in schools or colleges. So that's fantastic. So I'm just going to, having started by going around the table, allowing you to introduce yourselves, I'm going to round the table now, and you just got to say, you know, would you recommend CILEX and why? So Stephanie, let me start with you again.
Okay, fine, thank you. So without CILEX, I wouldn't be where I am today. It's as simple as that. I don't believe, well, I wouldn't have been able to have afforded to go to law school and, you know, qualify via the traditional route. CILEX courses and qualifications are offered by a selection of approved training providers, including CILEX Law School. And also I've been through 3 different training providers throughout my 4.5 years. And the reasons that I've changed learning providers is to suit my lifestyle at that time. You know, I have a family, I have a mortgage, you know, I've got bills to pay, and they offer me flexibility. I haven't had to take out a student loan. I've been able to pay my fees on a monthly basis. Some learning providers specialise with distance learning. Some offer both remote and classroom learning. So it really depends on the type of person you are and the type of learner that you are. And that's why I believe that there are so many people that have been able to come into the profession who perhaps wouldn't have been able to, because they didn't have either the opportunity when they were younger, or the university environment just didn't suit them. And for me, certainly, I've been able to study at my own pace. You know, I've been able to fit it around my working and my family. I've been able to specialise from the start, which is another unique thing to CILEX. And one other recent thing that CILEX has been able to offer is something called the CILEX Foundation. Now, that's a registered charity that provides relevant guidance and information and support to CILEX members in England and Wales who find themselves in unavoidable hardship. You know, and so that again is something that there should be no barrier to the legal profession, and CILEX, without a doubt, are helping people break down those barriers and qualify into the profession. So for me, you know, really, as I said, I just wouldn't be where I am without CILEX.
That's fantastic. So Vicky, follow that.
Absolutely, I'd recommend CILEX. Whilst I don't condone or encourage leaving school, I think it's so important that people realise that that's not the end of your career, and that you are able, you know, to make your way into law without having those qualifications. And obviously without CILEX, I wouldn't have been able to do that, and I wouldn't be here right now. I also think the amount of support, you always know that you've got somebody to turn to at all times. You have your tutor and then a learning development advisor. So if you're having a wobble or you don't know what you're doing, you've always got that person there that will jump on a call with you or happily explain things to you, which I think is really important as well.
Justine, you not only teach at CLS now, but you are, of course, which you did mention at the beginning, you are a qualified chartered legal executive. So you're coming at this from kind of 2 angles. So
yeah,
you know, what difference has it made for you, and why would you recommend the route?
I would definitely recommend the route. So I mean, I did come out of school with A-levels. I had a university place, but I chose not to go to university because I didn't really know what I wanted to do back then. I thought I was going to go off and be an art scholar, but then I got a job as a trainee legal clerk, and I just didn't look back. I absolutely loved it. And I think, you know, as a young person, you don't sometimes know what you want to do until you actually start doing it. So having got that trainee legal post, it was actually my work, same as Vicky, that put me through the CILEX route, and I got qualified. Really happy. Was doing litigation and personal injury law at that point in time. I did have some experiences of sort of some barriers and sort of some stigma oh, you're not a solicitor though, you're just a legal executive. But I found that that evolved over time, and particularly with the change in the law that then allowed legal executives to become partners in solicitors' firms. And actually, I was very lucky enough to open my own firm with a colleague solicitor and have that experience. And now the sky is even more the limit, because we've now had announcements that obviously, you know, the judiciary are encouraging now legal executives to apply for judicial positions. So I really champion CILEX, and the reason that I came out of practice was for personal reasons, but equally I didn't want to lose my legal expertise or qualification as such, and I did really want to impart on sort of people coming into the profession why CILEX was such a good route to do, because I found it gave me that practical understanding from a very, very early point in my career as to how to apply the law and how to help people, how to help clients right when they needed it, and right from the early stage of the career as well, which then, you know, it's quite an inspiring thing to be able to do. So yeah, that was me.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody. So that's the end of the show. We've come in at just under 40 minutes, as I hoped we would. So it remains for me only to thank Stephanie and Vicky and Justine for participating and giving everybody the benefit of your experience and insights. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we'll see you next time, potentially. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.